Live from Capitol Hill, it's Wednesday, the 22nd of January, year of our Lord 2020. You're listening to War Room Impeachment, the show on 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. live until the day after the acquittal, exoneration of Donald John Trump, the 45th President of the United States, that only yards from us was impeached on December 18th, and now the trial of the century starts yesterday, and we are kicking off today for the opening arguments, joined by Raheem Kassam. My wingman of UKIP and Brexit fame, Jason Miller, is on assignment today, and we're very honored to have from the Hoosier State, Senator Mike Braun, who was one of our first guests back in October, and really everything that you had to say back then has all come true, as we're going to get into. We're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem Radio Network, America's Voice, the #1 platform, streaming platform from the Trump movement, and Newsmax TV, now in 70 million homes, thanks to the great efforts of Chris Ruddy and the team down in Florida. Episode 127. Okay, we finished up here. It was 1:50 in the morning. Raheem, I think it finally ended. It came to a close. We're very lucky to have you that can put us inside the room. One, you've had a great strategic sense of how this is all going to play out, Senator. But put us in the room yesterday. Let's start at the lunch, because did Mitch McConnell blink, or is this people, a couple things happened importantly there. Number one, I think that you spread it over 3 days instead of 2. Number two, nothing. It was going to be no closed sessions, everything public, and I think also evidence would be the evidence from the House thing would be admitted right away. How did that come about? How was the discussion? How did Mitch McConnell doesn't look like a guy that blinks a lot?
So, my pondering there was, did he set that bar there to negotiate a little bit away from it? Because those were not a big deal when it came to the idea of.
What do you mean, big deal?
Well, when it was the House evidence,
two House evidence
question of that just going into the record rather than making it an option for discussion, that to me was not much to talk about. And then when it came to that idea, do we have 3 days or 2 days? Now that we've been through the first opening salvo, I think it's wise to do it over 3 days. I'm one that can take. Probably, I get up early, go to bed late. I'll never forget the first time I met the president. We were comparing notes on my dress code, casual blue shirt. And I happened to mention that I do not use an alarm clock. I didn't today and got up with about 4.5, 5 hours of sleep.
That is very Hoosier.
And he countered me with, well, I only need 4 to 5 hours, because I said 5 to 6 hours. So that was cool. But I think all of that stuff did make sense, because my opinion here, when you talk about the strategy of what's unfurling, is that they know the case is weak. They know the outcome. They are now playing into the Senate races in 2020, and they want to make it excruciating when this next round occurs, when we do take votes on witnesses and further docs. We saw how they played last night. They're playing to the TV and to the public, even though it was ad nauseam.
They're listening to War Room Impeachment because they understand that you're not the jury. The jury is the American people.
Exactly.
And the audience is a global audience.
Yeah.
I mean, they're watching this in Davos. The two things they're watching in Davos, 3 things. They're watching President Trump, the impeachment trial, and Greta, right, and Thunberg. But I want to go back to this. Do you think that the headlines this morning from Yahoo and from all this is that Pat Cipollone and the team got mauled yesterday? Do you think we got out-lawyered, or is it a difference in focus? Pat stood up, and he's a fabulous lawyer, but Rudy was on here last night saying, hey, you saw appellate court versus a trial. Pat stood up and gave a very reasoned, intense, open, but it was 3 minutes long.
Right.
He sat down, and then Schiff stands up, and I think it was 55 minutes, and he lays out the case. They're laying out their case, understanding that the global audience and even the American audience is coming to this for the first time.
And that is true. This is their first time in prime time. I don't think the House proceedings were that. But they are making their case. We talked about it a little bit pre-interview. Time of possession. Clearly, they want to use every minute of it. They also are playing, I think, to the public as it relates to the swing state races. So I think when you look at all that, did they overplay in the sense that we heard the same thing through those 45 minutes to an hour of discussion, and we did get off to maybe a little bit too much of a legalistic approach. and a little short. But I think as it went on, you saw the passion.
How far were we into Schiff's opening salvo when you were thinking, I think we got a problem here? Or did that ever occur? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, I mean, that was obvious.
I was about 20 minutes into it. I said he's arguing his entire case.
That's not a bad approach into the first hour. How do you think that was playing to the public, even in California, that went to bed because they weren't getting any new marginal information? They were then getting to ad nauseum in hearing everything that they were rehashing. But I think it's an interesting strategy. I believe that we came on strong. They had to continue.
Later in the evening.
We did.
Or later, yes.
Yes, I thought the passion was there, and we took a
Pam
little more time.
Biondi, Jay Sekulow, as you went into the evening.
Everyone, yes, I really do.
A lot of the headlines, as Steve says, talk about the quote unquote mauling yesterday. But again, these seem to be headlines created in maybe the first hour or the top 2 hours of yesterday's stuff. I've no doubt that a lot of people were watching that and they saw Adam Schiff and they thought, okay, this is an impressive person as far as presentation is concerned. But Senator, what did you think about the Democrats' use, the House manager's use of? They used a lot of slideshows, a lot of clips, a lot of videos in there yesterday, and a lot of them ostensibly out of context. For instance, we talked with Rudy about this last night. The clip about the president saying, I have an Article 2, I can do whatever I want, was specifically him speaking at a conference and speaking about his ability to hire and fire people as the Constitution allows him. But the Democrats are taking things like that, presenting them out of context, and as you say, as you both note, people are tuned in for a little bit. Are you worried at all that they're picking up on that they're seeing that and going, oh, wow, we didn't realize the president said this?
If you take it by measurement of time only, and that we'll have to see how that plays out over the next few days, but it was a pedantic approach, visual aids, and a long, boring lecture. And if anybody was in there for any amount of time, they were going to sift through that. And I think the real action, this was kind of a process day. The real fireworks will occur.
Hang on a second. We had Mark Meadows.
Yeah.
You came in here in like the third or fourth show.
Yeah.
So this is back in October. And you were already quite focused because you were looking downrange. This is going to be a problem. Meadows sat in here a couple weeks ago and said, hey, he had just gone and talked to the Senate that most of the senators were very detached from any of the details here. Right, he was briefing guys and was sitting there going, pretty shocking how they just had decided in their staffs not to focus on it. Yesterday, and back to Raheem's point, they stood up and had very well thought through, and of course they're going to select and curate their own things and cut the clips. I mean, they had a very selective, but these were full-on presentations. Hit the next slide, hit the next video. And if you saw the desk, their desk had piles of paper and binders, and they're going through it, and our guys' desks were clean and neat, right? It seemed like they were much more focused on the theatrics, the drama, and trying to... Do you think most of the senators were, for the first time, heard some of this stuff? And they're hearing it crafted by their presentation?
I think most of us heard the stuff. We didn't get it laid out in a session of that length and in detail. And again... how it plays out to us as senators, I think their approach is trying to convince the public. And I think it's aimed at these swing states. I don't think we can get away from that. So for the ivory tower, professorial type approach, the Dems probably get a better grade. When it comes to how the thing ebbed and flowed, I thought we ended up strong.
When you say the swing states, what are you specifically? You think the pressure coming on to some of these senators about is the trial fair or is there?
Yes. So when it comes to was it fair, they're going to still make an argument that we didn't bend at all on any of the amendments. So they're going to constantly run with, is this a fair process? Because they know on the merits that it's going to be hard to make the case. When you look at, did they have the better effect of making it a 12-hour venture versus maybe what could have been compressed? We'll see. I think this is mostly the criticism playing into the people that already knew what they wanted to hear, not for most of the public, which may be tuned in anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour at most per individual.
Okay. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we're going to ask Senator Braun to tee up the next 24 hours where they actually get to make their case. And Raheem, I think they're going to take every second of it. Raheem, you guys have been breaking so much news, and now we got the live blog over there. Tell people how they get to the site.
Yeah, we ran a live blog yesterday throughout all the proceedings. We're going to do one again today. Thousands upon thousands of people in the end were turning up onto the live blog, and you can chat in there amongst each other as well as look at all of the information that we're bringing you on a minute-by-minute basis. It will be from 1 p.m. at warroom.org.
And we don't know when this thing is going to end tonight, probably sometime around 9 or 10. Okay, episode 127, Senator Mike Braun will be back in a second. Okay.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam. War Room, Impeachment.
On the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam, and now Braun, Senator Mike Braun from the Hoosier State, Indiana, who's been really very perceptive in the 6, 8, 10 weeks we've had him on the show. War Room Impeachment, episode 127, live from Capitol Hill. We're in a few hours. We will pick back up, or actually start today, the presentation for the next 24 hours, the next 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It'll be the prosecution's case or the manager's case. So how do you give us a highlight as you sit in that room? First off, what is it like to be in the room? There's a lot of controversy. Brahim, he does a snarky thing yesterday. He takes somebody's got an Apple Watch on, and I think one of the managers, he tweets it down and it's now gone viral.
They said no. They said no electronics, under threat of imprisonment. Should we be locking her up?
So it was funny because that's how far ahead technology is in front of the Senate. A few did have Apple Watches, and those did get taken off. But what
they did get taken off.
I think so. Yeah, because they realized that some had slipped in. I don't think for any malicious purpose, but they had to go. I think the main thing is it's like anything. When you get into something new, you kind of see what your latitude is. You learn what kind of process you're into. That whole idea of not talking. We talked about it a little bit before pre-interview. It was funny to see who was breaking the rule up front, and it was kind of through whispers and so forth. And then as the evening went on, there was more of it. So, you also see that you can leave the chamber now and then, especially when you got into the later hours, because that was getting hard to take when they were coming back with the same stuff, filling their 45 minutes to an hour over and over. And I think that was a lot of time spent that they won't get real dividends out of. So you can get through it. It's a long session. When you put 12 to 13 hours back to back on anything, and I think the question came down, did we take a good advantage of it? I think we started a little bit short in terms of making our points and a little bit needing more animation. We improved as it went on. I think they risked repeating the same thing and turning a lot of people off and maybe not accomplishing what they wanted to, and that's have people glued to the TV.
Do you expect it to be showtime today now as they start their 24 hours? Because it was fairly processed yesterday. They had clips, they had charts, they had presentation material up there. Do you think it'll even be more so today?
I think the way it's going to start is that we have a few more motions that probably won't have the time devoted to it that they did yesterday. And then we get into the prosecution's case, and it'll be interesting to see if they take the visual aid kind of a real detailed approach or not. I think that remains to be seen. I'm sure they're critiquing, what they did as well.
You're strategic, so you sat there, and Raheem, jump in, but you sat there and said swing states for the presidential election, also for the control of the Senate. You were visualizing how these guys would weaponize actually in 30-second spots or in campaign material as you're sitting there. Tell us about that.
Well, in going through my own campaign, I always kind of discounted the importance of those key moments. If you have a blooper, it's the opposition research and it's in a commercial. If you have a moment where you kind of distill the point of view and do it simply and understandably, that's going to be made into a commercial for you. Right now, they're playing the 5 or 6 races that are in contention, and I think they know that when it comes to the case itself, the conclusion that we're going to end up with. But in the meantime, they are looking at every aspect. How do you spin it? How do you clip it for the elections?
Senator, you tell me what you can and can't answer, okay? I'm just going to throw this out for you. A lot of people would have seen yesterday the arguments being made by the Democrats effectively saying, you are a blockage. You are not allowing us to use the Senate and this whole new process in this impeachment saga as a means by which to uncover evidence, as a means by which to uncover further investigative details of what went on here. Just explain to the audience if you can, because a lot of people would have seen that and gone, oh, why is that going on? Maybe forgetting or maybe haven't been tuned out of that House process, that long House process. You guys, the way I see it, are not private investigators who are there to do Adam Schiff's job or to mop up the job that the Democrats failed to do in the House. And that seemed to be a very early and long-lasting theme for them over the day. How did that play out?
Well, one thing, I think you can go back to the playbook that you saw in the Kavanaugh hearings. Remember when the case started to peak, get weak? They wanted to delay and add more time, gather more information. That's a sign that you're not getting the job done through most of the meat of the proceedings. So you can count on that happening. And I think yesterday was mild compared to the discussion you're going to see once we get through phase one, because that's when all the heat is going to be turned up, and the real animated discussion is when it comes to particular questions about witnesses and documents. We saw the opening act yesterday.
But is that for the American people who are just coming into this, and they're really the jury, as we say? A lot of the legalism is kind of lost on them, on the basic common sense of the Hoosiers. They sit there with this narrative and this meme. Everybody knows what a trial's supposed to look like. Perry Mason, law and order. Procedurals are so big now. Everybody understands that. We just want a fair trial. You have to have evidence. You have to have witnesses. We're arguing, I think correctly, and we're going to have Bill McGinley in here after the senator, the kind of highly technical due process. They should have done this in the Senate. It's not, or in the House. It's not time. It's not our responsibility to do this for you. What say you?
Okay, so you got to be careful there. If you make it too legalistic, it looks like you're just trying to win it by process. That's not going to be good. But this is still all going to focus on witnesses, and they want live witnesses, not depositions. Then it gets to the issue of reciprocity. So surely there's not a Republican that if we get to that point, you'll have to argue who those witnesses will be. And then I think it'll get into more of a circus atmosphere, because they're not going to want to honor any witness that we might want to bring forward, and they're going to stand on the ground that you need them to have a fair process and trial to be inherently contradictory.
We just have a couple of minutes left. As you see it now, the start of the prosecution's case or the manager's case, what would it take among your colleagues as you sit there that would drive them to say, I think we need some witnesses here after this?
I think for the 4 or 5 senators that have been out there as wavering when it comes to those real votes, this is going to boil down to once the prosecution does its work, once the defense team steps in, I don't think the prosecution is going to win the day. I think it's going to boil down to how good a job we do when we get to the most important part of the proceedings that we've not had up to this point. Do they make the case in a way that looks like it would be a redundancy or just not needed?
And what do you think Pat Cipollone and the team, Jay Sekulow, what do you think they have to do in that rebuttal?
I think if they do what they did as the proceedings moved on yesterday, we'll be in good shape. I actually thought Jay Sekulow and even Cipollone in their moments did a better job than the other side, which looked very pedantic in their approach, like you were listening to a professor. So I think they've got it. They just need to unfurl it in a way that resonates.
We want to really thank you for coming on the show. It's extraordinary, and for you to take the time and effort. And here's the amazing thing. If you go back and look at Senator Braun's clips from the very first show, everything he says eventually comes true. So you've got a real handle on this. People in the Hoosier State should be very thankful that you're the senator and representing them in this jury, the trial of the century.
Thank you.
Raheem, on the site, where do people go to get to the live blog and get into the conversation, particularly leave comments or join the chat?
Yeah, warroom.org is the URL for all the shows, including yesterday's, if you haven't heard it, with Mayor Giuliani, as well as this show will be up immediately after. Warroom.org will also host the live blog starting at about 1 p.m. this afternoon as the Senate gets back underway.
Bill McGinley, the cabinet secretary in the first couple of years of President Trump's administration, will join us for his legal analysis next on episode 127.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Live from Capitol Hill, it's Wednesday, the 22nd of January, year of our Lord 2020. In a few hours, there'll be a few more motions, and then we get into it, the beginning of the 24-hour managers to present the prosecution of Donald John Trump, the 45th President of the United States, in the trial of the century, the impeachment, only the third time in the history of the American Republic. We're now honored. Raheem and I are honored now to be joined by Bill McGinley, Cabinet Secretary, has done such a fantastic job on legal analysis. Okay, the screaming headlines out of Yahoo and all these places that the White House team was out-lawyered, outmaneuvered, outgunned. It had a feel that the shift in these guys came loaded yesterday.
Yeah, they came prepared.
They came prepared. And we were doing two things. Pat and these guys were arguing it very tightly, as Rudy says, like an appellate court, very tight legal arguments to a jury. The shift in these guys had a whole different thing in mind, right?
Yeah. And I think a couple of initial thoughts on what we saw yesterday. First, it's clear that Adam Schiff and Chuck Schumer were coordinating everything because they had these tightly scripted PowerPoints and video clips that they were showing to make the case for each individual motion.
Okay, I want to make sure for the audience you understand that there were 11, I think, motions from in the afternoon all the way to 1:50 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
Schumer would stand up there. These things would be read. Some of them had 8 and 9 parts to it, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then you would see Schiff come up or Hakeem Jeffries come up, and they literally would have a presentation for all 9 subsections, plus videos, plus presentation materials, charts, graphs, whatever. It wasn't like, oh, they just thought of it in the room and how to respond, right?
That's correct. So it wasn't that there was some sort of unfair surprise for Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff had fully coordinated with Chuck Schumer, which really kind of tears at the fabric of their allegations that it's improper for Leader McConnell to coordinate with the White House or to have discussions with the White House. Clear that the Democrats are fully coordinated on their strategy, not only to change the rules, but to go to the merits of the case. So all of this back and forth about the impartial justice that they were complaining about with respect to the White House and Leader McConnell, we saw their violation of that issue, if you apply their standard, on open display yesterday with how they had the pre-prepared PowerPoints, graphs, they had the video clips teed up and ready to go for each of the 11 motions. Now, something that the Democrats did that was very effective yesterday, I think, for the television audience, which is the ultimate jury in this impeachment trial, was they used each individual motion to make their case for why Donald Trump should be convicted. And I think in order for the president's defenders to do a more effective job, they need to be prepared to go to the merits of the case every time Chairman Schiff gets up. They need to have a tight, fluid, understandable, easily digested argument that demonstrates to the public why there's no there, why the House Democrats failed in their duty in the impeachment proceedings, both in process and substance, and why the president should ultimately be acquitted and indeed exonerated. I think that really we need to do a better job.
You know, Mike Braun actually said it got repetitive, but they were arguing their cases the first time a lot of the American people have come to this, and they started laying it out. And by the way, Pat Cipollone had great moments. Jay Sekulow had great moments. Pam Bondi lit it up.
Totally agree.
You had those moments, but as a cohesive whole, and plus the time, you know, Braun called it time of possession. Right. It just seemed like the Democrats were up there forever they kind of arguing the merits of the case when he's supposed to be talking about, you know, these. Well,
this is what you said last week, Steve. Is that how long would it be that they're just hitting the allegation upon allegation before President Trump breaks in and says, hey, you know, I'm tired of getting beaten up on television for these long stints, and I think that's something that you saw yesterday. The other part of it is, you know, Bill, why didn't our side have the same things, the presentations? There's so many examples of the witnesses in the House contradicting each other, saying things that were just down to their own beliefs and their interpretations of events. Is it because they didn't expect yesterday to be a trial in and of itself? They expected it to just be rules? Are we going to be more on point today?
I hope they're going to be more on point today. I think the one thing that the president's team did is they acted as lawyers yesterday and not messengers for the president. And they had some great moments. They were pushed back, refuted a lot of the spurious arguments that the Democrats were advancing. But the one thing that they need to keep in mind, the American public is not going to watch this for 12 hours. And when they get up and speak, there are certain points that they need to make every time that they're standing.
Repetition.
Because as soon as, the public's going to tune in for a very short period of these things, and they need to get those points across. It's the difference between kind of a closed-door trial where there's no cameras and the political event that is a trial in the Senate.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. Raheem, how do people get more, and particularly into the live blog and into the comment section and this chat room?
Yeah, and just to augment that, and the substance, as we've always said, the substance is on our side. So
Yes.
just keep coming back to the substance. And speaking of substance, everything you need to know about this process at warroom.org. Everything you need to know as it breaks over the course of the day will be on the live blog at warroom.org. And if you want to follow the video clips, the tweets, all of that at warroom2020 on Twitter.
Look, this is a historic moment. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your kids, you owe it to your country to step up here and get into the details, because it's going to have a huge impact. Episode 127, return with Bill McGinley in just a moment.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam. War Room, Impeachment.
On the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Ben and Miller, Kassam, and now McGinley, episode 127, live from Capitol Hill, Wednesday, 22 January, year of our Lord 2020. It's game day. Today begins the prosecution's case against Donald John Trump, the 45th President of the United States. You made a big deal the other day about, and look, you got to tell me if McConnell blinked or not. It wasn't about the 2 days versus the 3 days. It wasn't so much about the closed sessions, which you thought, better to have open sessions. But it was about the evidence coming over from the House case. What happened yesterday? Because I thought we blinked on this.
At first blush, it looks like a blink, but if you look at it, there's still some opportunities here. Yesterday,
Why is it a big deal?
The reason is because whatever the House compiles as its record is going to form the foundation for the closing arguments that the House Democrats are going to use to argue for the conviction of Donald John Trump. So that record that they're going to introduce into the Senate trial, yesterday, the original text of the rules said it will not be admitted into evidence until everything is done, right? And even then, it's going to be done by motion, right? I felt that was a very fair way to proceed, given the criticisms of how the House Democrats had conducted themselves during the impeachment, relying on hearsay, opinion, labels, and other things that are inherently unreliable to go into evidence. What the change is that now they've almost built in a presumption. So instead of saying it may be introduced into evidence, it says it will be introduced into evidence. However, it is subject to objections about hearsay, other evidentiary objections. And what that means is that if the president's lawyers are scrutinizing the House record, they are going to find, under the federal rules of evidence as kind of the anchor for their arguments, why some of the evidence that the House Dems are using should not be admissible in the trial. Democrats can't have it the same way. They can't say that the Senate is a unique institution that gets to operate in its own universe and then say, well, our job is to be prosecutors. Our job is to use the federal rules of evidence. Our job is to say that this trial needs to have all sorts of evidence. You can't have that internal contradictory argument. This record needs to be heavily scrutinized by the president's lawyers. Objections need to be made and make the House Democrats defend what their conduct.
Okay, so what you're saying is today, this is going to be highly choreographed.
Yes.
If they're if they argued the merits of the case just during the motions and had A, B, C, D, E, and had a video or a clip out of context, and Raheem's going to get to that in a second. If today's going to be massively choreographed, right, with videos and clips,
it's going to be the legal equivalent of synchronized swimming, right?
That's beautiful. But you're saying Pat Cipollone, Jay Sekulow, Pam Bondi, you expect them to be popping out of their seats all the time to break the momentum, to break the choreography, to break their kind of the rhythm, to break the rhythm and object.
I don't think that they're going to have the opportunity to object during the House Democrats' presentation of their case. I think where it is, they need to have all of the associate level lawyers who are supporting the team listening and basically flagging for them all of the misstatements, all of the places where Chairman Schiff, Chairman Nadler, and the others make their summaries, make their labels, fill in the evidentiary gaps from the House record, so that when they get up, they can cite chapter and verse. But when they do that, they need to read the transcript. Chairman Schiff said this. This is why this is wrong. So it needs to not only be a very well choreographed presentation of the president's case, but they also need to start dismantling all of the gaps in the evidentiary record produced by the House, all of the flaws in the arguments made by the House Democrats. This has to be not only a tight theory of the case that they present, but a dismantling of the other side.
But you don't get to dismantle it live. They get the whole 24 hours to lay it out in the choreography out of context.
That is my understanding.
One of the things out of context we'll play in just a second so the audience can hear exactly what we're talking about. But
how they do it.
I just want to come back to this contradictory thing, right? Okay, so they can't object in real time, but I bet you the Democrats will try at some point to kick up a vocal fuss in some sort of objecting matter for theatrics, right? So that they can get that moment. We've already seen them doing things and coordinating between Chuck Schumer and their legal team when they're criticizing the president and his legal team for doing the same thing. So why should and why are the Republicans and the president's team playing ball and playing by the rules here when we know the Democrats are going to break all of them and they're not even going to get a slap on the wrist for this stuff? They're not even going to get a slap on the Apple Watch.
And it's going to be in the public's narrative. It's going to be the meme. It's going to be what they remember.
Yeah, but this is where the 8 House Republicans on the legal team come in, right? Because we're going to see periods of 1 hour and then a break.
Those are the fire breathers.
This is their job. Their job is to be on cable television, network news, and calling out what the Democrats are doing live. So that when the Democrats basically start to, make these spurious arguments, Jim Jordan, Elise Stefanik, and the rest of them should be going in on the break and saying, this is where Adam Schiff was wrong. This is where Jerry Nadler was wrong, right? This legal team is a football team, right? You call the same play in the huddle. The people on the Senate floor are the line, right? They're doing the basic blocking and tackling. The skill players are the surrogates that are on TV that need to really be pointing this stuff out real time. It's a synchronized way for them to effectively get the president's message across. And it really means that the people in the back room need to be on the job. They need to be very tight on this and getting the information out real time.
Bill, I love you, but I'm channeling the audience when I say this. Isn't that so naive to believe that the producers of these television stations are going to put Jim Jordan on instead of cutting straight to whoever's coming out of the Senate and doing a gaggle on the floor?
You got to force your way onto CNN and MSNBC more than Fox. You got to get Jordan. You got to get Meadows.
But see, this I'm coming back to. This is why we needed the fire breathers in the Senate, rather than outside in the hallways trying to get on television. You needed somebody who can get up there and go, whoa, wait a minute.
Are people even, back to your understanding how the process works, are they even going to allow Pam Bondi or the fire breathers to stand up and object in the middle of this? Or are they going to get 24 hours just to roll? Later on, you're going to have to come back and say, this was a lie, this was wrong, this was out of context.
It's my expectation they're going to get 24 hours to roll.
But the Democrats are going to object in the Republican side of things. The Republicans are going to play by the rules for 3 days, and then they're going to get up and give their, this
it's
is
a
very
cultural
wrong.
problem we have as Republicans.
And Schiff is going to get up and he's going to go, objection.
Pat Cipollone and the guys played by the rules and did, as Rudy called it, a great appellate argument, and then Schiff came out and argued the merits of the case. Right, his 55-minute thing, he laid out his entire case and went on and on and on. He had videos. It was so coordinated.
Yes, but that's where our team needs to make an adjustment. Right? They need to be ready for the television moment. They need to be ready for the and justice for all objection. Right? They need to be ready to make those grab attention, highly charged moments that people are going to remember and will make the highlight reel on every newscast.
Okay, we're going to come back to the highlight reel of Bill McGinley, episode 127, in a second.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam.
Yeah.
War Room, impeachment.
On the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Episode 127 live, Bill McGinley. Okay, the president in Davos said, hey, I got 2 witnesses I want to call. I want to call Zelensky and the prime minister. Thank you for listening, Mr. President, because that's exactly, bring those 2 guys, it's over, it shuts down. Your concern yesterday, you understand the details here. Where do you stand? Should we be concerned that we're going to get just Democratic witnesses?
Look, I think based upon yesterday, number one, Leader McConnell did a terrific job holding the caucus in place to get the rules through that he did.
You mean the 53-47 votes for 11?
47 votes, 11 times.
Well, tell the audience, why is that tough?
Because I think that when you have a caucus like the Senate Republicans, where you have a number of senators who caucus with the Republicans but will break with the party on any number of issues, he did a masterful job of keeping Susan Collins, Mitt Romney,
Mike
Lamar
Braun,
Alexander.
Senator Mike Braun said the biggest concern he's got is those swing state senators, the guys up, are going to be they're going to be the focus of the 30-second spots that they're going to pull out of this trial.
There's no doubt. Look, the way that we should be looking at this trial is the same way that we looked at the House impeachment proceedings with the 31. The dirty 30, as you guys called it, right? The Democrats are taking pages from that playbook and are going to execute it on the Senate. So it's not hard to understand what's coming.
They flipped it on us.
Yeah, they flipped it because we control the Senate. We've got a number of Republicans in tough states coming up. They're going to make them pay for every vote, which is why last night Schumer wouldn't stack the motions. He made it go one by one by one by one. Why? Because he wanted to create the record for the 30-second ads in Colorado, in Maine, in the other states where some of the Republicans are going to have tough races.
Real quickly, do we have breaking for the email dump last night, Raheem,
Yes.
on the Freedom of Information, and there's more breaking news today on additional investigations. What's going on?
Yeah, so last night, American Oversight, which is a group that was in part founded by David Brock, the head of the very heavily left-wing Media Matters organization, they had a Freedom of Information request in to release almost 200 pages, emails, information that came out about the hold, Department of Defense hold.
This is the OMB and DOD emails, right?
That is correct. That is something that a lot of the news organizations are rolling with this morning. Effectively, what the emails show is people going back and forth saying, we've got to get a hold on this, we're pausing this, we're trying to explain why it's happening internally, trying to figure out how we deal with it. It's that kind of thing. There's a lot of process, a lot of what you would expect a bureaucratic government process in there. It's worth recognizing that American Oversight is cited by almost every news outlet, but nobody tells you who they are.
Yeah, David Brock, yes.
Very, very heavily left-wing organization. At least 11 of 17 staffers have history in the Democratic Party and working for Joe Biden. So caveat emptor when you're looking at American Oversight information there. The other thing is Real Clear Investigation story that's up on warroom.org as well at the moment. Whistleblower was overheard in 2017 discussing with ally how to remove Trump. You can read more about that story at warroom.org.
Okay, in 15 seconds, what should people be looking for today?
People should be looking for the House Democrats to try and fill in the evidentiary gaps through summary. That the president's surrogates need to be calling them out real time at every place that they are. And also, we should be looking for additional document dumps from FOIA requests from organizations founded by Democrats, funded by Democrats, staffed by Democrats to advance the Democratic interests.
But you're saying you'll tell if you're winning if the engine room's got the surrogates up on MSNBC and CNN. If you see the firebrands up there, you know that we're ahead of this, right?
That's correct.
Okay, episode. We're going to be back tonight at 6 p.m. with the evening show. See you at 6 p.m. will be episode 128, live from Capitol Hill.